Well, welcome back. The basic fuel price has hit record levels, reaching 16 Rand per litre inland for the first time. It goes without saying that everyone, the middle and working classes, with perhaps the exception of the super wealthy, are all feeling the pain. The price of fuel affects almost everything, and the biggest burden is on the poorest section of the population. The economy is also feeling the squeeze, and as a result, inflation is ticking up. Well, now a new tax revolt is being touted, and it seems to have worked with e-tolls, but will it work this time with the fuel levy? The DA and tax lobby group Outa want R1 taken off the fuel levy to ease the burden of the rising oil prices on the public. We're now joined by Wayne Duvenage from the organisation Undoing Tax Abuse. Wayne, good evening to you, and thank you for your time. I mean, your basic argument is that the price of fuel has outpaced inflation. We're now spending, what, 33% of the amount we spend on petrol for this levy, and it keeps rising.
Yes, and we've seen the weaker rand and the fuel prices, oil prices going up, which has exacerbated this problem. And those are uncontrollable from a government point of view. But what is controllable is the fuel levy and that road accident fund. And Bongani, if you look back over the last decade, the pictures tell the story, the numbers tell the story. For the first 6 months of this last, or 6 years of the last decade, the fuel price and the road accident fund increased by an average of 25 cents. For the next 4 years, between 2014 and now, that increased nearly doubled to 45 cents per litre. And that's quite excessive.
It's hard to argue with you when you consider the fact that, 10 years ago, we were spending R7.48 per litre, roughly.
Yeah, exactly. But what happens is the fuel component, or the oil component, the petrol component, what they call the BP price, the basic fuel price, BFP, in 2014 was around R8.06. In 2015 that dropped to R5.86. And what government did then was quickly took the opportunity to push those levies up so that the fuel price had dropped slightly, it should have dropped more. And we warned that when the fuel price gets higher again and the rand weakens, it's going to come back and hit society very hard. And that's exactly what's happened. Now, if fuel prices go back and the rand strengthens to where it was a couple of years ago, these levies, which are now 30%, just over 30%, will become 50% of the fuel price. So society never gets the benefit of a stronger rand and a low international fuel price because the government continues to levy society.
What about the argument, though, that the road accident fund performs a very specific function without which, the public would suffer?
Yes, absolutely, and we need the public to be protected for their injuries sustained in accidents. But Bongani, that levy was 45 cents 10 years ago. It is now R2, and we see the maladministration and the potential corruption that is coming out of what is happening in the road accident fund, which is why part of our protest was to call for a full investigation and an independent inquiry into what is happening at the road accident fund.
I mean, the thing that we have to ask, though, is there are those who will say this is just a populist move. Where is the money going to come from? The fuel levy contributes, 77 billion rand to the fiscus. If you just lop off R1, that's 23 billion rand gone. It's going to come from somewhere else.
Absolutely. And what we're saying to government, and this is part of a journey of a bigger picture, that if you are not going to get your house in order with your maladministration within government, with your corrupt spending, then you cannot continue to lean on the taxpayer and push up these levies and so on. So what we're saying to government is find those savings within your governance processes, and you will have enough to be able to bring down taxes like the fuel levy, which, by the way, those savings are passed on to everyone, consumers and getting goods to the market.
I mean, we've got a graphic here which you can explain, and it really does outline the picture in terms, and it's one of course, your documents. You can see your branding on it. It does outline the picture that you've painted. And as dire as it may look, the ultimate point is that you can't budget for corruption. You can't budget for maladministration. So there are those who push back against what you are calling for and say, yes, that looks bleak, but it's disingenuous to say if we just all manage things better, everything would be fine.
Well, it's not. If government breaks its compact with society, if government believes that it runs short of funds, and the only way to get more money is to find new ways of taxing society through sugar taxes, through carbon taxes, which are coming. And these irrational taxes, e-toll taxes, we see some of them they can't even manage, and they fail. Then what we've got to do as society is push back to government and say, no, not on our watch, not while you are wasting our taxpayers.
But again, your critics will argue, yes, let's say government goes along with your plan. Where does the money that you're taking away from the fiscus come from?
It comes from the savings that they start to introduce in efficient government. Efficient government is what required here, Bongani. We know that billions are lost to corruption. What we're saying to the politicians is go and fetch the money by holding those.
But what I'm saying though is that that's not a line item. It's not as if when they do the budget they have a line item that says this is so much that we're spending on corruption or malfeasance or maladministration, therefore we can put it back to the fuel levy. That's not there.
But that's the problem. They've got to go and find it. It is that we know it's not a line item, but they're continuously asking for more to bail out SAA, to bail out Eskom, to build more houses, get the education, the schools built, and we don't have that money because it's been corruptly spent. And so they just say, well, let's push the taxes up. So what we have to do is ask government to make sure that they allocate the funds more efficiently, reduce the bloated government, and you'll find 22 billion rand, not overnight, but this is how you push back. You force the issue, and then they have to go back to the drawing board.
All right, well, like he told, I suspect it's going to be a long battle yet. Wayne Duvenage, thank you very much for coming in. That's, of course, Wayne Duvenage from the organisation Undoing Tax Abuse. They're calling for a removal of R1 at least from the fuel levy.